LSU, they hired Brian Kelly. Why did Brian Kelly want to leave Notre Dame? I think Brian had realized the ceiling of Notre Dame football, and he had gotten them there. He'd got them. They'd gotten in the playoffs. They'd been close-ish, but they'd always been like that elite playmaker or two away. They'd never really had that elite guy, mostly in the defensive secondary. They've had Harrison Smith back there, but outside of that, they haven't had any first or second round corners, let alone multiple ones at one time to be able to go against the likes of the Oklahomas, the Ohio States, the Bamas, the Georgias, the LSUs, who have elite skill position players on the other side. They've had good D linemen, great tight ends, great offensive linemen, pretty good running backs. They've had some good receivers, as you've seen, with Claypool tearing up with the Steelers. I mean, they've had guys who are pretty good players at all those other positions. I think Brian Kelly looked at it, and Notre Dame's upped their facilities. They've done a good job, probably loosening requirements a little bit to get some guys in, but you're recruiting in South Bend. It's tough with the talent base. And maybe Notre Dame said, you know what? We don't want to make any more exceptions. Our academics are the academics. This is what it's going to be. And I think Notre Dame's in a good spot right now. They're not elite. They could get in the college football playoff. I think everybody knows what that game would look like. They're good. They're really good. But when you start talking about the elite 4 or 5, they're like just kind of knocking at the door right there. And maybe if they put it all together in a year, and if they would have had a better team this year, could have been the year they won it, because there wasn't, in my opinion, Georgia's really good, but I don't see any quote elite teams with elite offenses and elite defenses. That hasn't really been the case this year in college football. So maybe if Notre Dame would have timed it up right and this would have been their year, it could have been it. But unfortunately, that really wasn't the case for him. So I think Brian Kelly has seen his ceiling, and maybe the fact that, hey, Notre Dame's committed a lot to this, but we're never going to be the SEC. We're never going to go all in on this. So if you want to win a national championship and you think that, we're not going to be able to have what it takes, maybe those conversations have occurred. Maybe Brian Kelly had pushed so much, and he has gotten so much done at Notre Dame, so much done there from where it looked like when I was coming out of school to where it is now. He has moved that thing mountains, and they've done a fantastic job with it. Maybe he realizes this is it. I'm 60 years old. NFL is kind of come and gone. And maybe if I want to win a championship, I'll go gas up for 5 to 7 years at LSU, see if that works. Does the fit work for LSU? I don't know. Brian Kelly doesn't really seem like a guy that could exist in the South and go down there and have a lot of success. I don't know. I mean, he's about quite opposite of Ed Orgeron, if you really look at it. I mean, how the personality wise, how they go about things, very, very different. He's not this incredible offensive genius. He's an offensive innovator, but he does a really good job, to my mind, running programs. They're paying him a boatload down there. I believe, his salary is getting close to, $11 million his last couple of years. I believe he's the highest paid public university coach now, at least as far as records are going with that. And he said it all with his statement when he came out. He said, I want to be on Broadway, the Broadway stage. There's no doubt about that. LSU is there. Their last 3 coaches have all won national championships. I don't believe there's another program that's ever done that. Ohio State has a chance to do that right now with Ryan Day, should he get there. But if you think about it, Nick Saban, was able to do it. The Mad Hatter was able to do it. Ed Orgeron, who even wasn't probably the greatest coach, but put together a remarkable season. He was able to do that. That is what Brian Kelly will have to live up to. There's some unbelievable bonuses that he has in there. It's a $500,000 bowl bonus. LSU has made a bowl game for the last 20 years. And then he gets raises. These aren't even bonuses. They're raises that'll be stepped in every year. And the more you do it, the more they'll grow. But $250,000 raise that can be accumulated each year that he wins the SEC championship, and then a $500,000 raise, you win a national championship. So Brian Kelly, heck, by the end of this, if he has any type of success, could be making $13-14 million a year by the end of this deal. And so Notre Dame fans probably a little bit upset. Who could fill in for there? But we'll get to that a little bit. But LSU having to move on Brian Kelly because this guy, Lincoln Riley, who was at Oklahoma, took the USC job, was apparently flirting there. They thought they might have him wrapped up. He chooses to go to USC, so that Brian Kelly thing comes together really, really quickly. And, with this as well, people are banging on Brian Kelly, how he left. He did come back. He did meet with his team. I don't know what you want these coaches to do. Everybody does this. He's not going to stay if they make the playoff. I don't think they have a viable shot at really winning it all anyway. Maybe they could win their first game, depending on who the matchup is, but he did come back. He did try to face the music with his team. It's just the system that's set up in college football is so ridiculous. But I don't think this is something that he'd been out there lobbying and looking for these jobs for quite a while, because I had heard that LSU job was belonging to Lincoln Riley, who took the USC job. So Lincoln Riley, there reportedly 8 years, $110 million. Southern Cal private school, so wouldn't fall into that same public school purview that Brian Kelly did at LSU, but getting $100 million, basically getting $1 million bonus for his houses, limitless use of the jet. They're buying him a $6 million home in the Los Angeles area. Good for Lincoln Riley. I think this is something that they'd kind of been looking at him for a while, and they wanted to get him. He does a great job recruiting in Southern California. And frankly, I think Lincoln Riley didn't want to go to the SEC. And that's kind of been talked about last episode. I think this is something that, he was kind of fearful of, didn't want to head over there. A lot of uncertainty. Would they be able to compete? Everyone thought it was going to be great going to the SEC. Fortunately, it's not. He's somebody, though, from everyone I've talked to, I think has been getting a little weird the last couple of weeks. And they had a viable shot at potentially making the college football playoff as well. Should they have won Bedlam and then won and beat Oak State back-to-back weeks, they could have potentially gotten in. But Lincoln Riley, eyes on the horizon, going out to the West Coast, massive deal again. The jet usage is ridiculous. Good for him for getting all that built in there and worked in there. But from what I had heard inside the Oklahoma program, they were working on stuff for him there, and he had kind of led them on to believe that he was going to stay. Then he ultimately goes to USC. So I think everybody there at Oklahoma is upset. Plus, they've seen massive decommitments, something that you haven't seen at Notre Dame, by the way. Florida getting it finalized with Billy Napier coming in from Louisiana. He's done a good job. He's going to have his work cut out for him, trying to salvage that recruiting class and get everything going, because you're competing against Georgia, who looking pretty darn good right now, and ultimately Tennessee in the East, who's on the come up, and then also UK, who just has got Mark Stoops apparently signed to an extension. So the East is looking a lot better. Billy Napier, I think, is a good coach, has some ties there before, so we'll see his level of success, in the SEC, but a former Saban guy and what he's going to be able to do there. So a couple of the big time jobs that are still open now: Oklahoma and Notre Dame. Where do they go? Oklahoma, I know Matt Campbell's on that list. People are saying Brent Venables is at the top of it. The coordinator for Clemson, ties to Oklahoma with Bob Stoops prior. I think that would be a natural fit coming back. You have to build out that offensive staff. But I know a lot of former players are stumping hard for him. Luke Fickell, you put potentially in that mix, although the Notre Dame job opening up kind of might muddy that. I mentioned Matt Campbell. A lot of people have thrown Mark Stoops into that conversation, brother of Bob Stoops, who, by the way, is going to be coaching them in the bowl game, which I think is terrific. Good for him, pulling the Barry Alvarez and coming out of retirement. This might honestly be something that we see happen more and more as these college coaches leave before bowl games. If you have a guy who's an old retired coach who hasn't been that far removed from the game and can really just come in and administrate things, and especially who has ties to university, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So Bob Stoops will be coaching it. Thought his brother Mark might be in the running for this, but apparently UK, they're working on a new deal right there for him. I think he's done a heck of a job, at Kentucky. I believe they could get to 10 wins with a bowl game win. So that would be a big thing for Kentucky. They know their expectations there. They've invested heavily into him, but I don't think anybody at UK is viewing Mark Stoops as a failure if he doesn't beat Georgia, Tennessee, Florida each and every year. So he's got different expectations, which are probably a lot nicer for him. He doesn't necessarily have to be all the way at the top, all the way at the pinnacle all the time. Realistic expectations. Just don't be the embarrassment. Let's make sure we can beat Vanderbilt, be competitive. Every 2, 3, 4 years, maybe we can win 8 to 10 games. Let's just keep our floor at like 6, and we'll all be good.